Good morning, this is Mr. Morales, and I'm going to be explaining to you the 6 weeks exams for those of you who maybe need to do corrections or just want to better understand what the questions were asking and how they were being answered. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Number 1, the graph below represents a function that is called g of x. Let me let this focus, I apologize for that. Sometimes this camera takes a moment to get into focus. There we go, that's better. What is the value of g of 7? That basically means when your x value is 7 and you go to your graph, what is the y value that corresponds to it? In this case, 2. So that was choice C. Question 2. What is the value of x in the equation 3 times x minus 8 equals x plus 4? This was a griddable. They wanted us to record your answer and fill in the bubbles on your answer document. So you should have used nsolve considering this was a time test and you are allowed to use your calculator. However, if you didn't, here is the math. You should have distributed the 3 and the x minus 8. Once you've done that, you want to combine all your x's to one side. I did that by subtracting the x from the right and from the left. After you've combined your like terms, you go ahead and got rid of this minus 24 constant by adding 24 to both sides. And then I went ahead and finally got the x by itself by dividing both sides by 2, and you get 14. Number 3, we're asked which of these sets of ordered pairs below does not represent a function. So in this case, we want an x value that repeats with different y values. And if we look at all our choices, choice A is the only one that does that. I did check all the other ones just to make sure because there have been questions in the past where there was multiple correct answers. But for a standard multiple choice test, there is only one correct answer. And in this case, it is choice A, where we have the 2 going to a 3 and the 2 going to a 9. There we have the x value being repeated with 2 different y values, and by definition that is not a function. Question 4. What is the domain of the function in the graph below? The domain measures the width of the graph. So we use the x-axis as our ruler, so to speak, and we know we go from least to greatest or from left to right. So the leftist most part of this graph terminates here at positive 1. But because we have an open circle, it doesn't really connect or exist at positive 1. So I have my less than arrow but with no equal sign. So now I go to the right, and this arrow tip on this end tells me that this graph goes infinitely to the right. So what you're going to see a lot of times on tests is they won't show you the infinity. What they'll do is they'll go ahead and just kind of take it out and give you half the answer. In this case, the 1 is less than x. But when we recite the domain with the variable, we always go variable first. So all I did was flip the direction. I put the x in front, the open mouth of the inequality symbol was facing it, the greater than sign, and then the 1 comes after it. And that corresponds to choice G. Going on. Question number 5 now up here on the top. If f of x equals 5x minus 8, what is the value of f of 3? So all you had to do was substitute in 3 for x, follow PEMDAS, and we get an answer of 7. Number 6. Which of the following shows the range for the relation in the graph? This is related to question number 4. Now we're talking about height. Height is measured on the y-axis, so we're using y. And because we're measuring the y-axis, we can already see that we can take out 2 choices, G and J, because they're both using x. So now we have it between choices F and H. We go from least to greatest. The lowest this graph exists at is at positive 2. The highest, or the largest amount that this graph exists at is at positive 6. Solid dots on both ends tell me that this graph does exist or is equal to these amounts at those points. So I have the equal signs as well. And when I look at my choices, that corresponds directly to choice H. Number 7 now. It says the equation 2x plus 2 equals 54 can be used to to find the sum of 2 consecutive even integers with the sum of 54. Find the largest integer. So before I filled in my answers, I basically had 2 blanks. I had blank number plus another even blank number. I didn't know what they were at first. They were unknown. And I knew that they equaled 54. They went ahead in the story and gave me the equation to find x, which is the first of these 2 even numbers. So 2x plus 2 equals 54. You could have used nsolve, which you should have done, but if you didn't, here's the manual work. I isolated x all by itself, and I get x equals 26. When I look at my answer choices, I notice that 26 isn't on here, so there's obviously something missing either in my thinking or in my process. And I can tell that if I read the question again, find the largest integer. That means between the two numbers, the two integers, 26 being the first one, the largest one would be the next consecutive even number that comes after 26, which would be 28. 28 is indeed an answer choice, and just to make sure that my thinking and my math added up, I did add and check 26 plus 28, which is indeed 54. So this one was probably more of an upper level understanding question, and if you got it right, nicely done. If you didn't, you may want to reflect back on what it is in the future you need to do to better understand these types of questions. Moving on to number 8. Given g of x equals 2 times x minus 3 plus 4, what is the value of g of negative 2? Once again, this is just a substitution problem. We have some distributive property going on here, and then it's just PEMDAS all the rest of the way out, and you do get a negative 6 for your answer. Moving on, question number 9. A partial graph of an exponential function is shown in the graph below. What are the domain and range of this graph? So first of all, we have to find the domain, which is the width of the graph. So domain is measured on the x-axis. The graph goes as far left as negative 3 and as far right as positive 5. So I'll look at my domain choices, and I already know that choice C and choice D do not match up to my left and right of negative 3 to positive 5, so I can take out these choices automatically. However, B does correspond to what I need. The only difference is in the arrow. Here I have less than equal to, here I have less than. So I'll go ahead and go to negative 3 and verify. I have a closed circle, which means my graph does exist at negative 3, so I have a half equal sign right there. And just by process of elimination now, I can tell that choice A is indeed my correct answer. I can go ahead and verify and say, okay, my height, my range, goes as low as positive 2. I have that right here. And it goes as high as positive 6. That's true. Open circle for positive 2 means it doesn't exist there, so it's not equal to. That's correct. Closed circle for positive 6 means it is equal to or does exist there. And there you go, my half equal sign, so it does correlate. Number 10. Solve the following expression for x. This is literally an n solve, or I guess you want to call it an x solve equation, same difference. I went ahead and did all the work with the distributive property here, and I kept everything in fraction form to get to 4/9 for an answer, choice G. But you should have, for the sake of time, just use n solve. But if you did the work manually, here's what it should look like, and congratulations. That's nice math work there if you were able to get to this answer. Number 11. The length of a rectangle shown below is represented by the expression x squared plus 4x plus 4. The width is represented by the expression 3x minus 5. What is the perimeter of the rectangle? So we have the top of the rectangle, which corresponds to the bottom, because in rectangles opposite sides are congruent, and then the left and the right both correspond. So I went ahead and broke down all my terms into 3 categories. I have x squares, x's, and then constants, or just plain old numbers. So I went with the highest exponent first, and I added how many x squares I have. I have 1x squared on the top, 1 on the bottom, and none on the left or right. So that's a total of 2x squares. Remember, you do not add the exponent. You just count how many of these x squares you have. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine all my x's. On the top and the bottom, I'm given a total of 8. On the left and the right, the 3 plus 3 equals 6. 6x's plus 8x's gives me a total of 14x's. And then finally, my constants. I'll go ahead and add those numbers there at the end. So I have positive 4 plus positive 4 equals positive 8. Minus 5 is going to be positive 3. Minus 5 more is going to be negative 2. Combine all those answers, I get 2x squared plus 14x minus 2. Choice C. Question number 12. Find all the numbers such that 18 plus 4 times the number is no more than 450. So this is just translating a written statement into an equation. So I went from left to right, 18 plus 4 times a number, I don't know what that number is no more than 450. That means it could be 450, so I have a half equal sign here. That takes out choices F and H. It can't be more than 450, but it can be less than 450. So I have that symbol right here. Then I went ahead and solved this just like I would a two-step equation. Subtracted 18 from both sides, divided everything by 4 to get the end by itself, and I get n, or x as the case may be, is less than or equal to 108. It doesn't really matter what variable you use, but you can see the same thing. Moving on to the conclusion of this test. Number 13, we have a literal equation. If AC minus B equals 1, which expression represents C? All they want you to do is to get C all by itself. So I went ahead and wrote my equation down. I first got rid of this minus B by adding B to both sides. When I did that, it canceled off on the left, and I'm left with just the A times